Never save money. Those were the first words my grandfather ever said that truly stayed with me. I remember staring at him in complete confusion. Everywhere we go, people tell us the same thing. Save money, save for emergencies, save for retirement, save for the future. But my grandfather looked at me, smiled quietly, and said, "No, don't just save money. Make your money work harder than you do." At the time, I thought he was wrong. Years later, I realized he was teaching me one of the greatest financial lessons of my life. Let me tell you his story. Long ago, in a quiet little village, there lived an old man. People knew him as the dreamer. Every afternoon, he sat beneath the same large tree. He watched birds fly across the sky. He watched travelers pass along the dusty road, and every day he repeated the same words. One day I'll become rich. One day I'll build a business. One day my family will never struggle again. But every tomorrow became another yesterday. He dreamed, he planned, he imagined, but he never acted. The villagers laughed at him. Some mocked him. Others simply shook their heads. After a while, nobody laughed anymore. They just felt sorry for him. His wife worked every single day. She cooked, she cleaned, she washed clothes. She stretched every coin as far as she possibly could. One evening, she sat beside him and spoke softly. "Dreams are beautiful, but dreams cannot feed hungry children. We need food. We need income. We need action." The old man nodded. He answered with the same sentence he had been saying for years. Soon. Everything will change soon. But soon never arrived. Months passed, then years. Life became harder. Food became smaller. Bills became larger. Hope slowly disappeared. Then one cold evening, something happened that changed everything. His little grandson walked into the room. The boy's clothes were worn. His feet were bare. His face looked tired. Very quietly, he asked Grandpa, "Do we have anything to eat tonight?" The grandmother opened every cupboard. Nothing. She checked the shelves. Nothing. No bread, no rice, no flour, nothing. The old man stood silently. He looked at his grandson. For the first time in his life, his dreams felt completely useless. That night, he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the little boy asking for food. Before sunrise the next morning, he made a decision. Instead of dreaming, he went looking for work. He became a laborer. The work was exhausting. The sun burned his skin. The fields were dry. His back ached. His hands filled with blisters. His legs trembled every evening. Still, he returned home with a few coins. His grandson smiled every time he walked through the door. Grandpa brought food today. The family survived, but only just, because every week the same thing happened. Money came. Money disappeared. Food. Medicine. Rent. Everything needed money. Nothing remained. He realized something painful. Working only for today's expenses meant tomorrow always looked exactly the same. One afternoon, he overheard two men talking outside the village store. One of them proudly said, "The smartest people always save money." Those words stayed in his mind. That evening, he found an old glass jar. Every week, he dropped a few coins inside. Clink, clink, clink. Each coin gave him hope. His grandson found the jar and smiled. "Grandpa? What's inside?" The old man smiled back. "Our future. Saving wasn't easy." He wore torn shoes. He delayed buying clothes. Sometimes the family ate smaller meals just to save another coin. Little by little, the jar became full. Months later, he proudly carried the jar to the market. He believed his future had finally arrived. He placed the money on the counter. "I'd like 3 sacks of corn." The shopkeeper counted the coins. Then he looked up. "I'm sorry. Prices have gone up. This money only buys 1.5 sacks now." The old man's heart sank. He had worked for months. He had sacrificed everything. Yet somehow his money had become smaller without spending a single coin. That evening, he sat outside his house in silence. He watched neighbors walking home. One carried fresh milk. Another carried vegetables. Another carried eggs. None of them looked rich, but none of them looked worried either. Then a simple thought entered his mind. What if, instead of saving money, I buy something that produces money? The next morning, he emptied the jar, not to spend it, to plant it. He bought 4 skinny little chickens. His grandson laughed with excitement. "Grandpa, we have our own little farm now." The first week, they collected 1 egg. The next week, 2, then 4. They kept some for themselves. They sold the rest. With the earnings, they bought more chickens. More chickens produced more eggs. More eggs produced more income. Every week, the old man carefully wrote everything inside a small notebook. Eggs collected. Eggs sold. Money earned, expenses paid. Month after month, the business quietly grew. Neighbors started coming directly to his house. People trusted him. Children laughed again. The kitchen was full. The cupboards were never empty. For the first time in decades, the old man wasn't working just to survive. He was building something that kept working even after he rested. One afternoon, his grandson picked up an egg and asked, "Grandpa, is this really worth more than money?" The old man smiled. He held the egg in his hands and replied, "Money sleeps. But the right investment keeps working. Money loses value. Good assets create value. Money disappears when you spend it. But when you invest wisely, it comes back with friends." Years later, the grandson became successful. Whenever someone asked him the secret, he remembered that old village, that tiny glass jar, those 4 little chickens, and one unforgettable lesson. Don't let money sit still. Give it a job. Because money locked away slowly disappears. Money invested has the chance to grow. You don't need millions. You don't need perfect timing. You only need the courage to start. Even the smallest investment can become the beginning of a completely different life. And that was the greatest lesson my grandfather ever taught me.